Hey everybody, how's it going? This is the Daily Creative. I don't know if you're familiar with this show, but if you're not, this is where I answer your questions about your journey toward becoming an amateur, maybe even a professional creative. That's the only career I've ever had. We used to do these things on a set, and now we're just doing them wherever. So I'm about to get my face made up to go on air, and we had 5 something minutes before. So let's get into the show where I'm going to answer a question from. We're going to call Katie, right? So Katie called in, left a message on the voicemail number, which is, maybe you can put that in here, or it's 802-962-4357 in case you care. But we're going to call Katie. She has a question. I don't know where Katie's from. We're going to find out in just a second. But let's do that now.
This is Katie.
Hey Katie, it's Chase Jarvis. How are you?
I'm doing great. How are you doing?
I'm good. I'm happy to be talking to you right now. Where in the world are you?
I'm on vacation in Santa Barbara right now.
Oh, I love it. Please ask away, and I'll want to be as helpful as I can. Go for it.
All right. So my first question is do you use packages when you're selling for commercial photography? I know you do with like portrait and weddings, but commercial seems to be a whole different ballgame.
I love this question. If you're out there and you want to be a commercial photographer, please listen carefully. Katie, definitely do not do packages as a commercial photographer. It will be strange. It will be strange. I'm glad to hear you have a dog in the background. Say hello to him for me. So I'm going to provide some context here. The way that I would like you to think about it is threefold. The first fold is there is a production fee that is associated with the job. The second is that there's a creative fee that's associated with the job. And the third is that it should be your job to find out how to get as much money from the client as possible and deliver that value so they are super stoked. And if you say, oh, it's going to cost $5,000, they say, okay, good, no problem. You've done a bad job, because what you want them to do is like, oh, wow, I thought I could maybe afford it. I'm going to have to go back to my boss and then get approval, because that tells me you're right at that threshold. And that's the way I did it, and that's a positioning thing, so I don't want to be overly prescriptive, but I do want you, as that third sort of pillar, to find out how you can make as much money from a job as possible. Now I'm going to go back and go through each of those things. Are you with me?
Yep, I'm here.
Okay, so the first part is a production fee, and the reason that this is separate from your normal fee, your creative fee, whether that's a day rate, or I don't like day rates either. I like to try and just have a bucket that I call my creative fee. But the reason that production is separate is because sometimes they're going to say, okay, I got a portrait shoot. And you're like, great. And it's one person. And sometimes a portrait shoot is like a group of 25 people. And the difference in how many makeup artists you're going to need, how much prep time, how many like scouting days you're going to need to go look at the location, all those things vary dramatically based on one shoot. It's like if you said, hey, I want you to build me a house, and you're like, great, is it a 2-bed, 1-bath house, or is it a 12-bedroom, 10,000 square foot house? It's still a house, but the amount of work that goes into it is dramatically different. So it's your job to get really, really good at estimating what the production costs of something are going to be. And the way you learn from that is you ask a hell of a lot of questions. How many people? What time do you want it to shoot? What's the location like? How much is the location going to be? Do you want makeup and styling? Is there a wardrobe needed? Like, what are the ramifications? Sometimes I need a crane to get above the shoot, to look down on the birthday party, or whatever the concept that the creator or that the ad agency or the client pitches you. You need to create a budget around that of all of the parts and pieces that are going to be required to make that shit happen. And you understand the house analogy, right? Like, you can build a 1-bedroom house or a 10-bedroom house. It's still a house, but they're wildly different costs. Does that make sense?
Right.
Got
yeah,
it.
it totally makes sense.
Okay, so you'll also get really good at, you'll have a bunch of people that you regularly work with. You know that the makeup artist is going to be $500, and his or her assistant's going to be $200, and then the prop stylist, you need all kinds of tennis rackets or whatever for this, and so you'll have go-to people in your network, and you'll start to know what their day rate is. And it's not uncommon for you to, if you're going to pay someone $500 to charge, say $600, you mark up their costs, and that is a way that what you're doing is you're essentially taking some money for yourself for the process of scheduling and managing that person. So that's what a markup is for. And you can see that if you do that across all these different pieces of the production piece of the budget, that you might be able to make a little margin there. I don't like trying to make a ton of money on the margin on the production because it starts to feel a little bit slimy, but you need to make sure that your ass is covered, that everyone's gonna get paid on time, and just do not skimp on the production part of the shoot, because what that's gonna reveal itself in the final project. Because if you're trying to, you can imagine, I don't need to go into the scenarios. If you start cutting corners on the production, it's going to be revealed in the final shot. So what you need to be is really good at estimating all the necessary parts and pieces, and this is something you get better at over time. But it's very important that you keep this part of the budget separate. That's the production part. Then I like to have a creative fee, and this creative fee might be some combination of day rate, like I'm $2,000 a day, and this job is a 5-day job, so therefore it's $10,000. But I don't love that. I like to just look at like what the production is going to be, say $100,000 or $50,000, and yeah, I want to make sure that I'm getting a couple grand a day, but I also want to understand like what problem I'm solving for the client. If we kick ass on this shoot and they're going to be able to sell, 1,000 more vacation packages on the cruise or some other deal, that the value they're providing is very high. And I want to steer you. There's all kinds of resources on CreativeLive. There's a Chase Jarvis Live that I filmed with Ramit Sethi, which is really good about trying to position yourself in the market. So I think you should try and find out where you fit in, where in each job, like your creative fee can flow a little bit. And I don't break that down. They say like, I can't believe you're $5,000. And you're like, would you trust someone who is $500 to do this work for you? This is gonna be a very important shoot. It's gonna change the trajectory of your company if we really get this right, for example. So I think, going back to the top of the hour, I'm gonna ask you in a second if you have any questions, but just to remind the folks at home and you got a production side, you need to get really good at estimating things and don't skimp on that budget. Then you have your creative fee. I like to try and charge as much as possible. I position myself as a premium thing. I'm not saying that you have to, but you need to be cognizant of that. And don't forget, this is like what I also charge time for scouting. It's not just the shoot days. If I have to go out and look at a location before I go there, I have a scout fee that I associate with the project. I've got the shooting days, I have post-production days where I'm reviewing and managing the product, and sometimes I break those out, but by and large I try and put all that into one fee so that you have a little bit of slush to move in there if the job grows or shrinks. So those are the components of it, and notice that it's very different, and I think this is a freaking awesome question. I'm really, really glad you asked it, Katie, because so many people, if you try and package it for an ad agency, you're gonna look goofy. So before we wrap up, I want to know if you think I gave you most of the info you're looking for, and B, if there's anything else I can help with before we bounce.
Yeah, my other question was that I just met with a company yesterday in Santa Barbara, and they want to be able to work with me in the long run, but they just started. Yep. And so obviously we're asking for any price breaks in the beginning. And is that something that you would recommend? Is if it's a company I can grow with, I really like what they do, and I think that they could go pretty far. I just don't really know if giving them a price break at the beginning is going to be beneficial to my business.
Sure. If you give someone a price break, let's say it's $5,000 and you decide that you would be willing to do it for $500, and their promise, I promise you, they said this in the meeting yesterday, that when we get $5,000, it'll be great for you. That client, once they put you in that $500 photographer bucket, they will never pay you $5,000. You will be the $500 photographer for them forever, because when they get $5,000, they're going to go try and find someone else who used to be $10, and now they might be able to get a deal there. So I do not like that. I would prefer, there's a blog post, do you remember what it's called, Finn? Is it like work for free or full price? But
yeah, say no unless it does two of these three things.
Say no, read this blog post on my blog, say no unless it has two of these three things. And it's basically portfolio, price, or an extraordinary opportunity to work on something that's wildly creative. So I don't like underpricing. I want you to go read that blog post. I think it's going to tell you everything you need to know.
Okay, awesome.
I really appreciate your call. thank you for being a part of the Daily Creative. Keep spreading the message, and I hope you get a bunch of value out of this. And I would love it if you'd check in on, I don't know, just in a couple weeks here, when you get your first gig, or if you have any questions. I'm like laser focused on my social feeds right now. If you're asking me some ats or whatever, hit me up. I'll try and keep following up because I love this stuff.
Oh, thank you so much. I appreciate it.
Of course, have fun on vacation with the dogs on the beach there in Santa Barbara, and I'll cross paths with you again soon.
All right, sounds good. Thanks so much, Chase.
Bye.
Bye.
There you go. If you want your question answered on this here show, The Daily Creative, it's pretty simple. Dial 802-962-4357. Leave a voicemail there. I get your number when you call on the Googles, and then these guys here, the folks that produce the show, they may call you and say, hey, Chase wants to take your call live. Not always, but I may do that. In any case, I want to make sure you get your questions answered, and it's also, you should really watch a bunch of the other episodes because we all have really similar questions. We're all in this together. That's the goal of the show. Rising tide floats all the boats. I know just enough to be dangerous, and I know how to help you. 802-962-4357. Signing off until